Hello, everybody, and welcome to our after church tea time. I am joined by Nikki and Andia, and we are going to chat through our key takeaways from the sermon by Lorenzo and Alexandra on being in tune with our true self. And I feel like it's, for me, been a constant journey of discovery. So I feel like there's things that I probably would have talked myself into and talked myself out of that I'm finding now, being on my twin flame journey and being in the Church of Union, that I'm exploring it from a different perspective and kind of feeling more comfortable with it. So yeah, that was one of the key things that stood out for me. So I'm going to check in with you ladies. What stood out for you most?
I think for me, what really hit home was recognizing your true self, your divine self. I think for me personally, that's been one major block in my union, and just, seeing who I really am and seeing that God has always been with me in these places that, looking with ego, you'll think like, oh, I can't believe I did that, or this experience was so bad. And, before I found this work, it was almost like a denial. Like there were all these parts of myself that I just did not want to look at because I thought that's like a reflection of who I was. And I really struggled in the beginning to just recognize who I am and not like things that have been conditioned on me or somehow I've chosen to take on because I was in relationships that, just were not very healthy. And I think that was like the biggest takeaway, that like it's possible to do so. And we all know like through this work that it is very possible. And, once you get through it, you just go deeper and you start realizing how okay everything has really been. Like everything that has happened in your life has really brought you to this place. And that whole having courage and bravery also stuck out, because it's not an easy journey to confront things that you've been ignoring for most of your life. But I just had this feeling of just like gratefulness for being here and being a student of Jeff and Shaleia, and like having the opportunity to heal, because not everyone chooses that. And so it was just kind of driving home the whole purpose of why we're all here ultimately.
Yeah, I can relate to that as well. Something that stood out for me was, of course, like having the space to explore and giving ourselves the space to explore, to see what we value, what we like, what we don't like, and just getting clarity on every aspect of our life. And knowing that the clarity and the peace feeling that we get from recognizing like what we get from the clarity actually gives us the foundation and the safe place to go deeper. So it's okay, for example, if we, for a period of time, we focus on something that we want to really get clarity on, and then like when that's clear, we can go deeper in another place, and just taking things step by step and exploring things step by step and building that foundation with ourselves and God, and knowing that we as divine beings are created in a specific way by God, and we have to pursue that and really surrender into what God created us to be that like our twin flame. Like if I remember when Laurentio and Alexandra mentioned, like if you call in your twin flame, that's you have like to be very courageous and strong, like to overcome everything, that they will mirror you. And that's like the greatest love and the greatest gift that God has given us. Having this opportunity to really like ascend and having our twin flame show us in a fast way, but at the same time we need like to make the conscious choice to always go deeper in our relationship with ourselves and having like this clarity for it to be harmonious and get into harmonious union as well.
Yeah, I like that. And I think something that you mentioned and that also stood out for me in the sermon was the courage to actually explore. And I think, even this, not just even the exploration, but also the courage to be true to yourself. I think it takes a lot of bravery to sit down and be true to where you're at, regardless of what that looks like. Because I think a lot of the time we get conditioned into that space of not being completely clear and courageous about what we're standing for in this space. And so for me, sometimes it was allowing things that I probably didn't need to because I wasn't quite certain of myself. And just being courageous enough to say, actually, no, that doesn't work for me. And no, that's not how this is gonna pan out. And also, no, give me space so I can actually figure this out. And I think this journey has really helped me to have that personal courage, not only in the exploration, but also in owning the boundaries that I choose to have. But also owning the step, owning the power of the step into that exploration. So yeah, I just feel like it's been much more enlightening from the perspective that I had to get really, really honest with myself. And I feel like I sometimes still go down this road, and I'm still on the road of truly being honest. And I think it's something that stood out for me in the sermon as well, is just really that you're gonna get to know yourself when you choose this journey, and that it's okay to meet those parts of yourself that you may not have met. But it's also okay to let go of those parts of yourself that you thought were you and aren't actually truly you. And I think that's probably been the bigger part of the journey for me, is letting go of the things that I thought were me that no longer make sense. And even when I look back at it now, I'm like, what was that about? But it is interesting to kind of look back and go, oh, well, this journey has really been very much about discovery and exploration.
Yeah, I really resonate with that. I feel like I still have moments too where I'm just like, a thought will come up and it's almost like an automatic thing. Like, it's just like, oh yeah, that's what I've always thought for all these years. And then you have to just like, I have times where I have to like really like stop and just breathe and like remind myself that, this the way of thinking, this thought pattern, it has no power over me. Like, it's not useful anymore. Maybe at some point in my life it was helping me, but I'm not that whole survival mode and just kind of, doing whatever you can to get by, to just feel good. Like, it doesn't even apply here anymore. But it, like, for me, it was so entrenched because I was living so much of my life like that. When you have like 30 plus years of like thinking one way, and then all of a sudden you realize that I've just been lying to myself, really. And obviously in a compassionate way, because there were reasons why I was doing that. but just like kind of owning who you are, I feel like that's been kind of the biggest lesson, and something that even this week I've been healing through, and just like learning how to claim yourself fully. And I like how they said that you have to be kind of like specific with your twin flame. You have to be really clear on that divine love that you have within yourself, like what that all means. And yeah, like the person outside of you and the relationship and all that is great, but that's not the whole point of it. Is like discovering that that has always really been with you. And honestly, I think back and like it just makes sense why I just wasn't happy, because I was always kind of in touch with that, with myself in that way, that, you know, divine love, but I just wasn't aware of it. And that's why I was in so much pain, because I kept thinking like I'm, you know, I'm alone, I'm separate. And, you know, when my twin flame physically entered my life, I didn't recognize him for the first year and a half. Like, you know, I had no idea. And it wasn't until I was going deeper and like truly claiming my divine self and learning who I am, that too, it was almost like a smoke screen, you know, like that, it just went away. And, you know, I'm still claiming a lot of things related to that, but just having that clarity and just knowing how to claim my power, even if I have a thought come up, even if I'm having a bad day, like the truth like always prevails. And just knowing the truth, even if there's like a hurricane around you, is such a game changer.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Like, you know, just the truth, the being specific. And I think that that was also quite powerful in just being truly specific. And I think something that for me has been a learning curve throughout my journey and really settling better now is getting that specific. You know, and I think it's something that stood out for me also from the sermon was just allowing Alex sharing the fact that you have to be that specific in order to manifest something. Like if you're not specific, you're kind of literally confusing God and you're confusing the universe. And in that way, I mean, if we just put it in our own perspective when dealing with other people, when they aren't very specific or very clear, it actually creates confusion. It probably creates a little bit of animosity. We probably don't really have a sense of certainty about things. And so if we put it in perspective to ourselves and just take it further and go, well, it makes sense. It makes perfect sense when you take it from your personal perspective and you look at it in the scheme of a bigger thing, and you're like, well, okay, yes, I do need to be specific, and I have to be specific enough to the point that I have certainty so that I am very clear, not only about the choice, but the true desire at the core. And I think that's been my biggest learning curve, was really to truly get clear about what's the desire at the core.
Right. Yeah. I have like this at this moment with my life purpose, like really getting clear on my desire there, because as like Laurentio and Alexandra were sharing in the sermon, and they mentioned like a part of the book where Shaleia was mentioning that people like our young people are exploring like the world and traveling and changing jobs and everything, like just to get clear on that. I've been doing that with my work because I've been very specific and clear with my love life since a early age, I would say, and that I wanted like my lover, and I really pursued that with all my heart. And then like when it came to work, I've been like really exploring what I wanted to do And sometimes like I really saw that, okay, I jumped into a job that I really didn't like, and it really helped me get clear on my values, first of all, and my likings and dislikings. And like I saw that when I started like doing posts, for example, that are twin flame related, then like my heart literally just opened up, and I was like full of energy, and I saw what that actually meant, and like what sharing actually this teaching gives to me, because it's like something that you're meant to do, like it will energize you. And about like the thing that Alexander was mentioning of someone becoming a doctor and feeling like bad about their job, and looking at somebody else whose purpose is actually being a doctor, and starting to compare and say, oh, like why am I feeling like this way? Why aren't I feeling like good as this other doctor? And that's literally insanity. And it's true, because for example, like I have a specific job right now that it's not my life purpose. I do it like just to be able to get into Ascension coaching and like to make ends meet. But I know that in my heart, I got clear on what I want to do. And it's just deepening. And it's very beautiful to know that as divine beings, we are created with our life purpose. And it's just a matter of you just pursuing it and seeing that you're also meant to do that with your twin flame. And that's like that's like the harmony that we all like want and love. And it's actually ours and it's nobody else's, because we're just so unique and divinely made that, yeah, comparison is nowhere to be needed to be seen. I don't know how to express, like to make sense. But yeah, like we're like God has taken care of us like since creation. That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, I feel like that like being very specific in your choices and having clarity, it honestly like it applies to all aspects of your life. And as we mentioned, like there's a lot of people that go into jobs that don't feel good to them, but they may just stay in it because they either are not being very specific with themselves, like what they really want and getting clear, or that they may be clear, or maybe the courage isn't there. And I feel like that all kind of, and it relates to like your food choices, like if you want to change the way you're eating, but there's just kind of like, well, I kind of do, but then I kind of don't, and you're not really like clear and specific. Like it's the same thing. I feel like it just applies to every little thing that we do on a daily basis. And I feel like, I mean, personally, the reason why I struggled so much was just because I did not understand who I was. And we just see that a lot, in human consciousness. A lot of people choose ego. I've been there, we've all been there. And I mean, getting over it really just requires just really listening to that voice inside of you that's just always, because I feel like you always know at your core whether or not you're doing something that truly aligns with who you are or it doesn't. Like even if you're numbed out to it, like the body never lies, in my opinion. Something will manifest as a result of that. And so, unfortunately, so much of this ego world's designed to kind of take you further and further away from that. So it really requires just, I mean, I don't even know how to articulate it. It just requires some sort of like innate self-awareness that at some point, I mean, I know everyone will wake up eventually, but God facilitates that. But, you also have to take responsibility and just like really get fed up with the decisions that you're making and like just say that this is not this is not it. Like, this is not good enough. I cannot do this anymore. I mean, I feel like that's kind of how I got to this place where I finally, like surrendered to the fact that I wanted my life to change. And that's where I, found my Ascension coach, and like things started like really changing. And it wasn't until I was like so fed up that I couldn't do it anymore.
I think something that you just mentioned that stands out for me, and that probably stood out quite a bit in the sermon as well, was that innate self-awareness. And I feel like as unionists, we've learned through Jeff and Shalea's teachings to understand that we truly do have a soul design. And I feel like before discovering their work, there was like, I didn't really have a sense that purpose and that soul design were interlinked, and that it's actually something that would steer me in a certain direction or not. And for the longest time, like when I look back, I always said that HR had chosen me. I hadn't chosen HR. So it was very interesting, because I then spent so much time doing HR, but I knew that was where I was meant to be, and I still know that that's where I'm meant to be. But it's kind of evolved into a bigger component. So the component of HR is the one side, doing some of the coaching work is another side, but they're so intertwined that the coaching happens throughout my HR work. So, it's kind of interesting, because we don't necessarily have this innate self-awareness. Something either feels right or it doesn't feel right, as you were sharing. And it kind of takes, again, it comes back to that true honesty. It takes the honesty to actually take that long, hard look in the mirror, or even just sit down with yourself and go, why is it not feeling right? What is out of alignment? Because I feel like that's where the clue is. The clue is in the feeling of being aligned or not being aligned. Because if you're not in alignment, something's always going to feel niggly. And that's been the thing that I've found even with doing the mirror exercise. There's a niggle, and if there's a niggle, I know there's deeper to go, or I know there's potential resistance or something like that. So I've gotten very clear about actually following the niggle, because the niggle is what kind of opens up the door for the exploration. It opens up the door to truly find the feeling. It opens up the door to truly find the alignment, which, in hindsight, HR is the alignment. HR in combination with the coaching skill is the alignment. It was just, at no point can I ever say that I consciously chose HR. I did industrial psychology, and HR is where I've been for over 20 years. So I feel like sometimes we're fortunate enough that we get steered in a direction that actually does work out. So it's not always that we're steered in a direction and it's not right. Sometimes we're steered in a direction and we think it's not right, but it's actually the perfect fit. So there's always two sides to this balancing act that we kind of need to be aware of and open to.
I feel like I had a similar experience with my work as well, like thinking that I should be doing something else that, might seem or is just obviously more spiritual, maybe something more in tune with twin flame stuff. Like I kept seeing that separation, and then it dawned on me that no, actually I'm right where I need to be. And there's a way to connect what I'm learning as a student of Jeff and Shaleia and just, a unionist and being part of this community. It's very much needed in academia. I mean, it's so stuffy and there's so much ego sometimes that I feel like part of my purpose is kind of bringing that divinity back into higher education, because I feel like, especially American higher education, has just kind of been watered down. It's more about like producing things and not necessarily taking the time to like really learn and honor the process of creating something. And so once I realized that, it actually helped me on the more personal aspects of my twin flame journey, just learning how to love myself and like see myself. So I feel like you sometimes are aligned, but you don't really see it. And then once you see it, it really shifts a lot of things in your life.
Also, about this topic, I know that Jeff in a life purpose class has said that any job that you have done throughout your life is essentially related to your life purpose, meaning that you gain something in your job that you will use in your life purpose. It doesn't mean that it's the whole skill set that you learn there, but you get something from each job, or like, yeah. And I've seen this like with myself, because I've changed like 3 jobs in 3 different profiles, and like the last ones that I had, it's like it's always like an opportunity to heal and just upgrade, like heal and upgrade, and you take all these pieces with you. And like, about, as Granville said, that you were like, HR chose you, and it's like God chose you there, so you learn something that you need. And I've seen this with myself and my jobs as well, that I didn't choose them. It's not that specifically I was thinking like, oh yeah, this is exactly what I would like to do right now. It's just that it felt good, and I knew that I had to be there. And I had like this feeling, okay, I will go there. And I, like, within the first weeks, I knew what I was there for. Like, in the first job, I had to learn how to communicate. In the second job, I had to learn how to set boundaries and other skills that are more in the work aspect, but always like there's something that you get from that. Like, nothing is coincidental. That's why, like, for example, if I think of another job or another sector of work that I could go in if I chose to, it doesn't feel good. It's like there's this icky feeling that is like, no, just stay away. Because it's that inner knowing, like that inner feeling, God guiding you. And you're like, okay, yeah, I will go there. Okay, I will follow. Okay, I'm open, like I'm surrendered there.
Yeah, and I think that's probably something that we do need to touch on, and just the strong sense that came through in the sermon from the card reading as well. It was that sense of surrender, that sense of that you're going to be led in a direction in certain instances where you're going. In fact, in most instances, you are collecting needed skills that get packaged very differently. Like I remember when I initially started with the live discussions for the Church of Union, I was like, what is going on? I've never done this before. Why am I doing this? And it's almost 3 years kind of thing, so it's just everything just aligned, and like you pick up the skills, and literally for me it's the sense of a tool bag, and you filling your tool bag all the time, and that tool bag is always going to be useful, which is what you were speaking to, Nikki. But like if you don't have the sense of being surrendered, you're not going to actually find the gems in some of the directions that you're being led, that you probably, like, if I had thought about it, I would probably say no. I didn't think about it too long. I was like, okay, that could be interesting. Let's go. So, it's those kind of things that happen to us that actually we do need to be open to. But again, it's literally comes back to the very beginning of Lau and Alex's sermon around actually just being open and what was the word? Getting specific and getting, what was the word? There was a word that they used, but yeah, I think it's just about being open to the exploration. Yes, it was about the exploration, and I think it's just to give ourselves permission for the exploration. I feel like we've grown up in spaces where you kind of needed to know and be certain, and there wasn't lots of room for maneuvering. And as we grew up, we grew out of the cookie cutter mold and into the freedom to explore. And I think that's really been the bigger thing, was just giving myself permission to actually explore and being open to the exploration.
I think in the beginning, when I first discovered the mirror exercise, I was really terrified about the exploration part, because I was so accustomed to just ignoring that bad feeling, that feeling it felt so, it was almost like crisis, like, oh my God, I cannot do this. And then over time, I realized that like there's so much to gain through that exploration, and just learning how to surrender to whatever is coming up. I always think of like that, and the metaphor of, or the analogy of, treading water, or like just letting the current guide you. And I feel like for so long, it was just kind of like a resistance. I was just trying to tread where I was, instead of just surrendering to God and his plan for me, and just letting it go, like letting my life just flow. And now that I'm in a space where I'm doing it, it's almost like, well, bring it on. Like whatever's going to come, I will explore it, because the opposite is just, it just doesn't make sense anymore. Like why not explore? Why not surrender? Life is so much nicer that way. There's no need to struggle, really.
Yeah,
I like that. I like the, sorry, Nikki, just that last line of yours, Anya. There is no need to struggle. Like literally, I feel like that is the core of it. Like we don't need struggle. We don't need to struggle. We need to flow. And I think that's what you were talking to in terms of treading water versus flowing with the current.
Yeah, something that Jeff has said in one class just came in my mind, talking about going to your feelings and feeling like you are like swimming around, and you're not staying in pace and in peace for you to be able like to let the water be calm, so you can just go with the flow. And you're like there in the middle of the water, and you're like resisting and just moving around, and then like you actually see that you can touch the bottom of the water. You can actually touch ground, and you're like, oh, okay, well, that wasn't that bad actually. Yeah, so it's like very safe and normal to follow that, but it's just all this programmation that we've been taught on, and like the ego and separation that tells us, oh no, actually you shouldn't be doing that, and you should be obeying to everything that I say and every structure that I build, which is actually an illusion. And there's like no logical sense to following that anymore. Like this teaching has taught us to follow the good feeling, and going back feels bad. So what should we do? We should explore and just move towards that good feeling.
Because there is always a good feeling at the end. And it's so true about like realizing that you were just like you could stand in the water. There was no reason for you to like swim in it and just get consumed by it. And I don't know. Sometimes I just laugh, not in like a mean, like taunting way, but just like chuckle at how safe I am. And yet ego just tries to like make you feel the total opposite. It's really ridiculous on some basic level once you can truly see it in a compassionate way.
Yeah, like, listen, it's something that always stands out for me. And like, you know, I have those laughing moments and like, yeah, okay, God, that was not funny. You know, like God has the sense of humor, and you just like, you look at it and you go like, okay, yes, I get it. It wasn't that funny. You just laugh because actually that's the only response. It's like you said, it's got this sense of the ridiculous to it, because we attach so much more meaning to something than what is actually required. And then when you do see the truth of it, you're like, okay, then moving swiftly along.
Something that this reminded me was the part where Laurentio mentioned the book Outwitting the Devil, and there was a part where it said that if you accept something that you don't like, and this is very intertwined with being very clear on what you like and what you want and what you desire and what you stand for and what is ego and what is not ego, what is love and what is not love, is so you can actually ascend by distinguishing what you want in your life or not, and saying no, and a very like clear no to ego when it is presented, even in subtle ways, even like in something that you think that is good for you, because you don't have like the full awareness there that is not good for you, but then you accept that and it feels bad. And like, of course, that's a lesson, but we have to make the conscious choice not to allow that anymore when it is presented to us. And like clarity is very like key here. So you know that, okay, I will allow only this in my life and nothing else. And I will not like fall for ego's traps in any way, even like if it's very small and subtle and you think that, oh, well, yeah, it's okay, but no, it's not actually, because you're saying you're letting your vibration get dirty in a way, and it's not like spiritually hygienic. So yeah.
Yeah, that definitely stood out to me as well in the sermon, was just also being clear about the no and not just accepting things. And I think it's something that probably has been a lesson. It's a lesson to be able to be at peace with saying no. And I feel like, having been on this journey and learned as much as I've learned, but also just working through the mirror exercise to gain that clarity, has allowed me to get to the place where I can comfortably say, no, this is not for me. Cool. So just checking in, how are you guys feeling? I'm feeling pretty much complete here.
Yeah, so am I.
Cool. Awesome. So thank you for the conversation today. Thank you for everybody who has followed us, who's liked our chat and shared comments with us. To everybody else, please also feel free to like and subscribe to our Church of Union YouTube channel, where you will find our live conversations that have taken place in the Unionism Spiritual Discussion Group on Facebook. And we look forward to seeing you again soon for another After Church Tea Time. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.